Happy Wednesday, Broncos country, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. I'm Brie Maestas, joined as always by Zach Seegers and Joey Richards. Guys, busy day today, but how are you?
Doing good. Our last episode was awesome. It was like exciting. We got breaking news during the middle of it, or actually it was towards the end, the Zach Allen signing, right? I think we had some good stuff happening there. We talked a good chunk of the free agents, but since then we've had plenty as well, guys that are actually going to affect the Broncos. So I'm excited for this episode as well.
Yeah, I'm excited. There's so much Broncos free agency news. I can't think of a free agency this active for the Broncos in terms of like just signings since probably those Peyton Manning years, those early Peyton Manning ones where they were going crazy for Talib, crazy for DeMarcus Ware and everything. And I'm not quite as optimistic as I was about those signings back then, but it's really exciting. It's fun. I think the team has gotten considerably better, and I can't wait to see how it plays out on the field.
Mm-hmm. What's for certain is they've amassed quite the weaponry that we maybe weren't anticipating. Maybe Broncos country has been through the ringer the past 7 years and wasn't anticipating a lot. They had lowered their expectations just a little bit so that you aren't hurt again. What the Denver Broncos did went out and addressed some very key areas. There's still a couple of moves that I think obviously we wanted them to make that they'll probably address during the draft. There's some exciting times ahead for Broncos country, but I think some really appropriate moves were made. We'll grade them here on Let's Talk Broncos some point throughout the week. We want to, of course, get to a lot of the information that is trickling down today. And obviously the talk of town, we have to talk about it. I don't necessarily want to, but Aaron Rodgers apparently wants to become a New York Jet. Guys, do you think that actually happens? Nothing's official until the ink is dry. How I see Aaron Rodgers playing this game, as he has done so for many years now, is just trying to get as much as he possibly can in the most dramatic and theatrical way possible. This feels to me that until that contract is signed and that tweet is out, that anything could happen from here until then. I don't have a whole lot of trust in Aaron Rodgers. How you feel about today's news, or unnews for that matter?
Go ahead, Mike. Go.
I'm so sorry, Joey. I'm so glad it's finally over. I think Brie and I are probably in lockstep with this. I thought part of me was terrified he was going to drag this out to August because that'd be the most Aaron Rodgers ending to it. Glad we got our resolution. It seemed like it was obviously heading this way, so why drag it out any longer? I'm curious how this affects the leverage, because now it's like that rabid Jets fan base is like, okay, we've got Aaron Rodgers coming. As Broncos fans, a lot of our listeners can probably relate to that draft day in 2020 where you thought you were getting Aaron Rodgers and all of a sudden you didn't, and all hell broke loose. So I think it's interesting to see, the Jets are kind of at a disadvantage in terms of leverage now, but also I think the Packers are at a bit of a disadvantage for leverage now because they don't really have any clear backup plan. Aaron Rodgers has made it very clear where he wants to play next year, so they can't really leverage the Jets' offer against anyone else's. Rodgers could always retire and put the Packers in cap hell because of how his contract is structured. So I don't know. It's going to be really I think they have to trade him, but also the Jets have to trade for him. So both sides are kind of negotiating desperately. And I could see him going for like a 3rd-round pick at this point. And then the Nathaniel Hackett of it all.
Yeah, I definitely also I think he will end up going to the Jets just because Rodgers made it clear in that hey, the Packers don't want me either. That's kind of the way he said it in there. It's a mutual thing. Like, I wish they had told me earlier. He also mentioned that, but the Packers don't want me as well. So I'm going to go to the Jets is what he said, or that's where he intends to play. Quote, like that's how he framed it. But yeah, I think he'll end up going there. And it is interesting. I don't know how it affects the leverage. I have no idea. It's kind of confusing because both teams are in a spot where if they were trading with anybody else, they wouldn't have leverage. The Jets don't have a quarterback, and the Packers need to trade Aaron Rodgers because he just said that he doesn't want to play there. So it's hard for both teams.
He's been saying that since Love got traded for or got drafted. So if Aaron Rodgers really didn't want to play in Green Bay, he wouldn't be playing in Green Bay at this point. I think it's fair to say that.
I do agree with you, Bree, but the difference here is him saying that the Packers don't want me either, which kills their leverage. That murders it. Like, what are they supposed to say now to him? Yeah, well, we just won't trade him. Okay, so now you don't. He just went public and said you don't want him, though. No one has any leverage in this. They're both working from zero. So it is interesting how it's going to work. I bet you it just holds out longer and longer, but they're going to have to both give in because, like I said, the Packers need to get off of Aaron Rodgers, and the Jets need a quarterback at the end of the day. They both need to make it happen. So that's just the way I view it. I don't know who wins it. I doubt it'll be a massive, massive trade just because of how much Rodgers has threatened retirement. Second year in a row now, saying I could leave. It could be a one-year deal with the Jets. So I doubt it's going to be huge like I thought it would have been for the Broncos last season.
Sure. It feels akin to Derek Carr giving the Raiders absolutely nothing to move off of his contract as well. I don't know. Quarterbacks in this league hold a whole ton of leverage here. Want to move on to some breaking news that we had as we went off of the air on Monday, or on Monday. I don't even know what today is. Wednesday. Yeah.
Monday. You're right.
Monday, as Draymond Jones decided to leave us and signing with the Seattle Seahawks of all teams. Feels like a rivalry brewing for Broncos country. I'm very happy for Draymond Jones. I know we talked about it quite a bit during that episode. I'm glad that he's going somewhere. I'm glad that he seems very thrilled about it. Sad for Broncos country, but Zach Allen coming in should be a fairly decent replacement there, but a little sadness there. Did you guys have any parting words that you wanted to have about Draymond Jones?
Sorry, Joey. I wanted to add, just because it just got announced that he was going to the Seahawks as we were wrapping up. And then since the contract specifics have come out, and I think the only thing worth adding on this, because we talked about the Zach Allen and Draymond Jones of it all. I'm happy with Zach Allen. I think he's about as good of a replacement as the Broncos could have gotten this offseason, considering how many picks they have and all that stuff. So I like that aspect of it, but let's not villainize Draymond Jones for no reason. Like, this is how the business works. 99% of free agents go to the highest bidder. Their agent I've heard so many interviews of guys talking about this where their agent pretty much tells them we're going, like, okay, this is the offer. This is the best one. And then they go there. I have seen no compelling evidence that Draymond Jones forced his way out of Denver. I think it's fine. If you are happier with Zach Allen and everything, I think it's fine to be okay with Draymond Jones leaving, but he did not force his way out of Denver. The Broncos didn't match that Seahawks contract. We'll never know if he would have left for less money or left for equal money because the Broncos never reached that point. For all we know, he just went to the better offer. And I don't think we can fault the guy for that. That's the last thing I wanted to add there.
Yeah, no, I think it sucks. He was like my favorite player on the Broncos for the last couple seasons. I've been tweeting like, if the Broncos sign Draymond Jones, that'll be the active player jersey I'll go buy, that 93. So I'm definitely upset about it. I wish he would return as a Bronco, especially like he got a lot of guaranteed money, which was a good thing to see in his case. So I'm happy he's on a team that I think is going to be pretty good. They upgraded, good for them. Draymond Jones. You know, Zach Allen is a really good football player. I think they got a good guy to slide in there if you were going to lose a Draymond Jones, but he's just not as good of a player. And I think the price tag reflected that, right? Draymond Jones got the higher pay than Zach Allen did. So if you were just fine taking the lesser player and not paying that position group as much, you're going to be happy. If you really wanted Draymond Jones back, you're not going to be happy. That's just the kind of way it works out in this scenario. Because I think that both guys got their value.
Speaking about value, that question has come up a lot as Darius Slay becomes available, and you have to start determining whether or not you're going to pay that caliber of a player. What would he constitute? What would he draw here for the Denver Broncos? Would you go for a contract like that? And also the eye emojis. I want to know your guys' take on that social media trend. Tell me how you feel about using that ad nauseum from March 13th to March 15th this year.
Yeah,
I love.
I
Oh my
definitely think
god.
that it's I definitely think that it's that the eye emojis is like it's I tweeted it before free agency started. I'm like, who's gonna be the first person to tweet the eye emojis and then pretend like it means nothing afterwards? Like, oh, I was watching the TV. What do you mean the eye emojis? But yeah, I that it's crazy and it's funny. I like it. It's just a funny thing every single year when it happens because Patrick Surtain wasn't the only one to tweet the eye emojis. Damn near every single team in the league as Slay was getting released had a player tweet the eye emojis. And he's even been retweeting like Jacksonville. I saw where like he grew up an hour away from where the Jaguars play. He retweeted that, and then also like he been retweeted. Is he going to Atlanta? Like who knows? I have no idea. What I do know though is Darius Slay, to me, in my opinion, was the second best corner in football last year. He was phenomenal. I thought right next to Patrick Surtain, he even said it too. He was like, guys, name the corners better than me. The only one that I think has a case is Patrick Surtain. And I agreed with him when Darius Slay said that. So it is a shock that they released him like they did. I have no idea what the situation is about that. But I imagine at his age, he may not get a long extension, but I bet you it's a hefty extension. Unless there was a reason why that we don't know why he was cut. But off of his play, that's what I would expect.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. This guy, you're freeing up $4 million. It does not it doesn't make sense to me. If you do a post June cut over 2 years, you can free up 17 million, which is like 8.5 million a year, and you're paying Darius Slay so much money to not play for you when, like Joey said, he's maybe the second best player in the league at a premium position. I think he's undebatably a top 10 player at a premium position and a hard one to cultivate. It's crazy to me. Like George Payton has the famous franchise cornerback quote that's been made fun of. And while like I don't think it's harder to find than a franchise quarterback, it is very difficult to find. So just throwing him away like they did doesn't make sense to me. I wonder if there's something else going on behind the scenes. Maybe it's just as simple as, hey, we only have the money to pay either Slay or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and we have to free this money up somehow. And this is really the only lever we have to pull. But I don't get it. I think he's probably just out of the market. The Broncos only have $9 million in cap space now. With the Waltons, they can get real creative and they can free up a bunch more cap space in a hurry pretty easily. Whether or not they want to do that, we'll see. Like a Cortland Sutton trade, for example, would free up a good hunk of space. But I don't know. I think it'd be fun. I hope it happens because, like Joey said, just imagine pairing those two cornerbacks on the boundary, and then K-Wan's a really good nickel. You've got two good safeties on the back end, and Caden Stearns and Justin Simmons. I really want to watch that just as a football fan, whether it be on the Broncos or some other franchise. That sounds like really fun football.
What we know is Sean Payton really is doing everything he can in order to create an identity here with this team, put his stamp on the roster and their skill set, which has created a debate amongst Broncos country about the wide receivers presently on this team. In Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, there has been no limitation of opinion out there today, specifically in who or if both wide receivers leave the team, which one would people be most comfortable with? Where do they fit in on this offensive scheme that you're seeing Sean Payton kind of direct his attention to? And then there's comparisons in talent with Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton and how you can move on from one or the other. I don't know which direction to take this, but I do want to emphasize that the Patriots have made a move in a general direction that makes it seem as though that is not the destiny for either of them. Do you think the Broncos would move off Sutton and Jeudy at this moment and be able to replace their production because of the direction the team and Russell Wilson need to go in order to be successful?
I think I can see a way where you could make these trades work. I'm not as opposed to them as I feel like much of Broncos country is. Now, I don't think it's realistic you'll get what I would need to get to make them work. Cortland Sutton, if you can get a second round pick for Cortland Sutton, maybe even a third, I'd be okay with that. It'd free up some money, especially if like there's a signing paired with that. And this receiver class doesn't have top end talent, but I do think there's decent depth. It is the weakest receiver class in the last 3-4 years, but there's always a ton of really good receivers in the draft. I think this year has some good 3rd, 4th round guys that could come in and be productive for the Broncos. Jerry Jeudy, I would be okay trading Jerry Jeudy for a 1st round pick if the Broncos do not want to pay Jerry Jeudy. And I don't think that's the craziest reality to imagine. The Broncos looking at Jerry Jeudy and being like, we've had work ethic concerns with this guy in the past, like some little character flare-ups. And, it does seem like we've sorted through those now. But are we worried that this is a guy where we pay him $20+ million a year and all of a sudden it becomes a character issue? I'm not saying that is the case, but that's an evaluation these teams have with every player they give a big contract to. And with Jerry Jeudy, that evaluation might be a little more interesting. If they're deciding like, no, this might not be a guy we want to give a $20 million deal to, although we recognize he's very talented, it's more character related, then yeah, trade him while his value is very high right now, recoup a 1st round pick and spend that on a good wide receiver you'll have cost controlled for 5 years. That's easier for me to imagine, honestly, although I think Judy's production will be harder to replace. I think that would be more of a long-term move, but I think it makes sense compared to trading Cortland Sutton, where he is a good starter right now. He's not amazing. It's a bummer he hasn't gone back to 2019 Cortland Sutton, but he's a good starter right now. And with the market being where it is right now, it's hard to replace that. I just wouldn't get rid of Cortland Sutton unless you're getting a good enough pick to replace him with. And in Sutton's case, I don't think you're getting a good enough.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it just doesn't make sense because everything the Broncos have done this offseason is, I mean, Zach, you said it earlier, you haven't seen the Broncos go into free agency and spend this much since the time where they were making Super Bowl runs, right? This indicates win now to me in some case. And I think trading Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton goes completely against that. It doesn't make sense to me because the receiver room, you could argue last year wasn't that great. Jerry Jeudy looked like he was coming into his own, but the depth behind it didn't look great, especially with Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler. Now, while KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick are coming back, they're still recovering off of that. You have a lot of people that will tell you Cortland Sutton hasn't been the same since injury. And then also tell you Tim Patrick can go and replace Cortland Sutton off of injury. So it's just backwards like that. I think that's hypocritical to say, right? Or you're only looking at what you want to look at in that view. So who do the Broncos replace this with? And then also, what type of wide receiver do you want? Because these are 2 different type of wide receivers, right? And I think they're both solid. It's just like, okay, so if you're eliminating Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, what type of guy are you looking for? And why won't this guy or this type of guy work? That's just my question at this point. It really doesn't make sense to me, specifically in Judy's case. I can understand, like, if they don't want to pay him, I just don't understand why they wouldn't want to pay him if he lived up and earned that contract. So that's where I am right now.
Totally. And really quick, in terms of the Broncos' finances on this, I could see them not wanting to pay Jerry Jeudy, and I also just think this doesn't necessarily clash. Trading either of these guys, I don't think entirely clashes with their other moves, because while these moves are win now, I also think they're win later moves. Like, let's say they move on from Russell Wilson this offseason. Having an offensive line for the rookie quarterback you draft is going to be nice, so I don't think those moves really clash with it. I think the only move, and then bringing Alex Singleton back, I guess that one could maybe, but I think that's just bringing back a player that played well, in-house guy. The only one that kind of clashes with it is Zach Allen. That one is a win now move to me, because you could have just let that be a void and focused on building up an offensive structure for whoever the quarterback is, whether that be Russ or a rookie. But I don't think they're so all in on this season with these moves that they couldn't trade it.
Sorry, Zach, you're cutting out there for a second. I wasn't sure if you're done talking. I didn't want to interrupt you. I think there are both valuable points to consider on it's kind of up to see how it plays out on what's going to happen here. Christopher Hart is pointing out Albright's point over on Twitter. So anyone listening, if you want to know what that is, you'll have to go over there. But going back 10 years, only saw one season in 2016 where the Saints had 3 wide receivers with 100 plus targets. There obviously is a conversation about what role and what type of production each wide receiver would have. The questions surrounding Judy, I think, are still there. He had an up year. We saw recent elevation and a promising start to that. I think you're right, Joey, that the emphasis is if they're in win now mode, getting rid of a wide receiver who has shown growth in that area might not be the smartest avenue, especially if you go back immediately into the draft, take those draft picks and draft the same position. If that's the thought process, that worries me quite a bit. However, if they're not intending to throw the ball downfield to the fastest receiver who's lost their coverage, then I think that it makes a lot of sense, and a return on a first round pick makes the most sense there. Business wise, I am a known lower lens here on Jerry Jeudy, so I think that I'm less attached to the idea, but I wouldn't want to lose his production and his potential. That ceiling's still very high. I think anybody you bring in is sort of going to leave this question mark and this why did they make this decision of all of the decisions, especially because Courtland Sutton has had a little bit of a struggle returning to form since 2019, and now the worry of Tim Patrick is going to be the same receiver. I just want to point out that there's been a lazy comparison here that you can replace certain receivers that are currently on the team with each other. I don't think that's necessarily the case, and then saying, well, if you just pop a burner on top of everything, you've got it made. So I just want to point that out, alleviate some of the burden there, because although I think the point does stand and you can make a very strong analysis to why each of those individuals is important in the offense you're going to see being run here, emphasis on running backs, fullbacks, and then God knows what's going to happen with the tight ends, but they're going to be creating the great wall out there for their quarterback. You have to change your mindset on that. What you thought were missed opportunities and wrong progression reads from Russell Wilson last season are actually going to be intentionally moving the ball up through the run and then hopefully getting it into the end zone. I digress, though. Do you guys either have additional points on Courtland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy? Joey?
I have one more real quick.
Yes, please.
I just think people forget Jerry Jeudy is 23 years old. I just want to make that so if you were, and Bree, you also pointed this out, if you were to trade Jerry Jeudy for a first round pick to just draft another wide receiver who's also young, you're like, to me, that's not just a win now move, because Jerry Jeudy is a win later and win now move. It's the match. It's just like signing the other guys, to your point, Zach. It's both. Like, I just don't. So if he deserves that contract because of this play, I wouldn't be opposed to handing it out to him. That could maybe be a little more made for Courtland Sutton, although I wouldn't trade him either, honestly, especially if it was for a day 3 pick. I just don't think you're getting value.
Yeah, I'd only do it if you have already come to the conclusion as an organization it is very unlikely we give Jerry Jeudy a big money extension. If you already think he's out the door in a year or two, why not trade him now, recoup a first round pick, and maybe draft a wide receiver that you do see being around this franchise for the next 7 years? Personally, I'd keep Jerry Jeudy. I've sung his praises.
I absolutely love it. I'm reading the comments right now. Thank you all for interacting. Sorry we haven't been deep diving into the comments. So hello to everyone. I see Bill, Christopher Hart, Frankie Abbott is in the chat. I don't want to miss anyone. I know Samuel Castro is there. Guys, we really appreciate it. Thanks for interacting with the show. Keep the questions and comments coming. I will get to them as much as I can. I was going to say something sarcastic as I normally do, but I will refrain. Becoming official right now, Chris Manhertz is signing on that dotted line. So that's going to come through the pike. Just happy to see a lot of really, good talent getting on the board. I just closed all the comments. I was going to grab this one from Bill. It's a great running back class, especially day 3. Bill, I think that's a really appropriate way to segue into a conversation that I want to have about what the offense now looks like behind that gigantic offensive line. You've got some really big running backs coming in, and I think the addition of one in the draft is going to be a smart move for all involved. It allows you to have that younger player come in, learn behind these guys. You get a veteran in. Do you want to use that to segue into the next topic of conversation in getting P. Ryan? Guys, tell me a little bit about what you see in this advantageous move, especially because Javonte Williams could potentially miss a couple of weeks to start the season. We don't know exactly what his timeline is. We know that it's optimistic, but it's not necessarily going to stay that way. How do you guys feel about this signing in particular? And what do you think they do to finish out and round out the running back room?
I think Bree last night went and watched a bunch of Samaje Perine film, and he's an interesting player. Now, these two statements, people are going to be like, Joey, what are you talking about, right? Because it's not going to make a lot of sense until maybe I explain it. I like the Samaje Perine signing, one. Secondly, I also think that they need to get a better runner of the football to go along with it. That's kind of what my statement is there, and I'll explain it real quick. Samaje Perine has carved out an interesting niche in the NFL. He is a good runner. He's not elite runner, but where he is really good is in passing situations. He's one of the best backs you'd want out there. He's going to be a terrific blocker. And then also he's a terrific check down guy. That's where he's awesome and really good in his niche, while also being this physical threat, like you mentioned, Bree, being able to run behind this big offensive line, stuff like that. To me, Samaje Perine is a floor raiser in this room because there's a lot of uncertainty right now, right? And there's not a situation where Samaje Perine is unplayable. He can play in any situation. He's good at running the ball. He's really good blocking, and then he's also a good check down guy. So yeah, I really like it. Furthermore, I think that they need some more juice in that running back room, or a better pure runner, I guess I would say. Someone I could hand the ball off to 15 times a game, and I'm like, that's the guy I want to really, really carve up that defense. And hey, guess what? It's a great running back draft, to Bill's point, and I think they could find that on day 3 of the draft. I do think that.
Yeah, they've got options. I'm excited with the bully presence they're building. But Bree, I know you're absolutely giddy with the bully the Broncos are building, both on the offensive line and in the backfield. I don't think I've seen you this excited about the Broncos since pre-Russell Wilson trade.
I appreciate you pointing that out, and I'm wondering if you just felt that in the presence. I think I drop it in our group chat quite frequently of just how impressed I am at the aggressiveness of the talent. So not just the moves. I think that there's something to be said about building this very scary offense, which is not what we've seen in the past. There's been bits and pieces, right? You see a Javonte Williams who is able to just throw his body around and make things happen. Your whole offense should be doing that at some point, not putting their body on the line where they're hurting themselves, but really actually throwing their weight around and not allowing imposing defenses to come in and kind of shove you around in the interim. So there's been a long standing issue with the Denver Broncos' ability to really establish a presence in the run. They've been able to get a run game going. They've been able to have bursts, but there's been not this identity of like, we are in this and we are going to make contributions to this, and it's going to be a long-standing part of this offense. So that's really exciting because I don't think you're going to be pushing around the likes of P. Ryan, Javonte Williams, Latavius Murray, and then whoever they add, I think is going to be big body as well. Then they're bringing in fullback in Burton. What?
Yeah,
Burton. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just interesting to me. Also, a big fan of tight ends and what they're able to do. When you start adding in the ability to actually block, you're opening up just a really efficient offense. And I'm pretty excited about that. Joey.
Yeah, Bree, I just wanted one quick thought. I think your boy, going back to the Jerry Jeudy and what you just said about tight end and Cortland Sutton trade stuff, likely Greg Dulcich is in like big plans for Sean Payton. I would assume there with the way they're treating those wide receiver, and then also to Christopher Hart's point, where wide receivers aren't targeted a lot in his offense. You can go back further to also Frankie, who rebutted in the chat about that, and find them. But yeah, I would assume that those trades, and you're gonna like it because you're a big fan of the tight ends. So go Greg Dulcich.
I am. Thanks for pointing that out. You set me up, made me look like an absolute genius. I do want to talk about something that doesn't make me happy, though. And there's this conversation about, I don't know anything about Tremon Smith. So I want to talk about it because I think there's a needed improvement in special teams, especially as a returner. Montrell Washington wasn't able really to catch fire and find that momentum there. A lot of frustration there, both from Broncos country. And we obviously know Montrell Washington wanted to do a little bit better in those roles. I don't see this as an immediate out for Montrell. I think this allows him to be utilized in a different direction, but obviously using Smith as the returner is going to emphasize the shoring up of special teams that Sean Payton promised with the new wave of how they're going to run their team. So guys, talk to me a little bit about this. How do you feel about it? What do you think it means for the return team and special teams, and just where you feel this leads to Montrell Washington's path?
I don't think he's done, but I think he's in trouble. He's a 5th round pick who George Payton's still there, but Sean Payton's, I think, the main decision maker now. So he won't have a problem getting rid of him. And I think the best thing we saw Montrell Washington do last year was his work in the return game. I'll have to pull up his stats here, but I think he had something like 5 touches for like -3 yards or something like that. It's just, I don't know if you can hardcore invest in him as a gadget player. Now, if anyone's going to figure it out, it's Sean Payton. So I think that aspect of it is exciting. And maybe that's what his future is going to be. Tremon Smith is a cornerback, so this isn't coming from Montrell Washington's wide receiver role. But Tremon Smith, regardless of sample size, because it is a very small sample size, but Tremon Smith is 2nd in the NFL last season in punt return average, and then he's middle of the pack in kick return average, which Montrell Washington was towards the bottom of the league in both categories. Tremon Smith has had less fumble problems. And the fact that the Broncos are actively making a move to replace the special teams aspect of Montrell Washington's game, when he is primarily a special teams player and he's a later round pick, it definitely doesn't say good things for him.
Yeah, I think Tremon Smith is a guy. I think people are forgetting that he was like a defender for the Texans too last year. Like, he did play defense, and he had, I think it was 3 interceptions, a forced fumble. He had 10 tackles against the Chiefs, 2 picks against Dak Prescott. Like, he actually played for them. So that's where he's also going to add value to the Broncos, where Montrell, I don't know. Like, you see the Broncos trying to trade all these wide receivers. Does Montrell fit in that receiver room? Does Sean Payton like him as a receiver? That's where Tremon is like, hey, I could also play defense for you guys. And clearly they like him because they signed him. So extra value there in both those aspects. And I would assume that I'm going to go out there and say it. I think Tremon Smith's the returner next year. And I unless Montrell really makes a big change and they see something in training camp with him as a wide receiver or an offensive weapon, it's going to be tough for him, I would imagine.
Yeah, I feel like there was definitely a point that he was being considered a multifaceted threat there as a wide receiver. So it's interesting to me, but we were just talking about DB depth. So I'm excited to see that they brought in someone who can potentially do both. So it's an interesting concept to kind of work through. I've gotten a lot of text messages about what are your thoughts and feelings about this? And everyone seems to be on the same page here, is that they're exciting moves. There's a potential here. There's an exciting aspect of it where you become optimistic. You can feel yourself kind of molding and melting into that opportunity to have a really good vantage point for the Denver Broncos in 2023. There's still a lot of work to be done, and we really won't know how it starts to play out until we start chunking next season into those quarters and assessing how everything goes from there. But I am excited as a Broncos fan first and foremost, and then secondly, being able to cover this new 180-degree turn. It's been very exciting. So we'll grade things out. We'll give our final thoughts once we're able to digest today's moves. But I just want to thank everyone for watching today as we, learn some really interesting information. Guys, I need to ask you though, where can everybody find your stuff?
Everybody follow me at JR Drafts. We're right under my little nameplate right there. Follow me on Twitter, JR Drafts. And then I want everyone to make sure you're subscribing to the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube. Next episode, we have a surprise for you guys. News coming tomorrow. So that'll be Friday when we have it'll be a fun episode. So keep an eye out for that.
Totally. Joey, is your next professional endeavor public yet? I don't want to blow up your spot, but I do want to shout you out.
Not yet, but coming soon,
cool.
guys.
Cool. We'll talk about it later. But I mean, in the interim, I guess mainly what I was going to say is go check out at JR Drafts. There's cool stuff in the works. Seems like I can at least say that. So really make sure you're going and checking out Joey's work because amazing new stuff is coming just in time for the draft. So make that on top of all your lists. And then, at Zach_Seegers, Mile High Sports, all that good stuff. Main thing I want to shout out is, I think some changes are going to be happening with Let's Talk Broncos. Who knows what that'll be yet? But the easiest, most guaranteed way where you can find us is go over to our YouTube channel, please. Let's Talk Broncos on YouTube, or subscribe on your podcast app, whichever one you like. You can find us there. Let's Talk Broncos. You will always be able to find us there, no matter what happens. Maybe nothing changes. That's the safest way to it. I've been meaning to plug it for a while now, so please go over there. Let's Talk Broncos on YouTube or your favorite podcast app.
If you like talking Broncos with us, I think you need to go over on and join the Discord and then follow us over on our socials. Bree Maestis 303 first and foremost. But Joey, I hate to do it to you. The chat's really mad. We got to do it. It's time for Joey's question of the day.
All right. I'm coming in with something on the fly right now. I forgot.
Perfect timing, Bree.
I forgot to come up with them, which is why we were avoiding it. But
I can throw one out.
Okay, go ahead, Zach.
I'm sorry. No, you go. I didn't mean to.
No, it's Zach's question.
No, I'm messing with you. Go ahead. I have nothing. I'm messing with you.
Okay. What do you think? Small free agency deal we didn't talk about today. What do you think about Juju Smith-Schuster surprisingly leaving the Chiefs for the Patriots and signing an identical deal to the one that former Patriots receiver Jacoby Myers signed to leave the Patriots and go to the Raiders? Because I think Jacoby Myers is a better player. Would you guys take Juju Smith-Schuster or Jacoby Myers?
I don't dislike Juju. I kind of like making fun of him for his TikTok dances, but I'm kidding. I don't understand. I assume he didn't like his piece of the pie, so to speak, from the weaponry that Patrick Mahomes had. I think there's just a little bit of he felt a little left out and he wanted a little more gain over there. Frankie also has a question. I'll ask it here in a second. But Joey, how do you feel about that?
It's a cold world. I feel bad for Jacoby Myers. It sounded like he wanted to go back, and they offered some dude the exact same deal he got. It's cold world. It's definitely a cold world, and I would rather have Jacoby Myers. I'm very anti TikTok dancing and stuff of that nature.
Corvette. Frankie's question of the day: what's one position you hope Denver still addresses, whether it be draft or free agency? You know what they need to do? They need to pick up PJ Locke's contract.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yes,
I'll end on that note too. Yeah,
there. Anyways, I do want to. I would say I would say interior defensive line, especially after Deshaun Williams got scooped up. I would say another interior defensive lineman is a big need for the Broncos. I think another running back is a big need for the Broncos. Honestly, if the Broncos trade a wide receiver, that jumps to number one for me. So it kind of depends on their next stuff.
Yeah, PJ, echo that.
Oh, that was your answer? Okay. We'll see you guys.
I'll go with it.
We'll see you tomorrow for What's on Draft.
Yes.
All right.
Be there.
Be there, be square. Bye, guys.